Hello there, Junior Tuckies. I'm Mrs. Brodenkamp, and in today's lesson about exam preparation, I'm going to be covering question 4, understanding other aspects of media. Let's get into it. First up, let's look at the different types of humor. We have pun, where it is a word that has a double meaning. Then we have ambiguity, where a phrase has a double meaning. Satire is when we are criticizing social or political issues within a country. Then we have overthrow of expectations. So a cartoon perhaps will lead us to this high expectation and then all of a sudden let us down. Then we have sarcasm, which usually has a nasty undertone. You can think of that. It's often used in quite a cruel way. Then anticlimax. It's exactly that. Also pulling us up all the way to understand something, to love something, to expect something new, and then letting us down in the last minute. And then irony is obviously saying one thing and meaning another. An important thing to remember is to never think to yourself, wow, this cartoon isn't funny. What I want you to think when you're looking at cartoons in your exams is, how has humor been used in this cartoon? How has humor been achieved in this cartoon? The next aspect I want to look at is body language and facial expressions. Did you know that body language and facial expressions are incredibly important when you're looking at cartoons? Nearly 80% of all communication between humans is through body language, so you need to be able to read it. Always think to yourself, how does this facial expression or body language help me understand the cartoon better? And then remember, when you are answering a question about cartoons, you need to identify the emotion or the feeling behind the facial expression or body language and actually identify the facial expression or body language. For example, the character looks disappointed as he's drawn with downturned eyes and a downturned mouth. Here are a couple of tips from the GDE. Candidates must be able to explore visual and verbal aspects of this text. The cartoon needs to be described in detail as part of the answer. Attitude is not the same as behavior and body language or facial expression. It needs to be described before it is labeled. Stereotyping and irony are common features of this question, as well as satire. The message of the cartoon needs to underpin the answers of the candidates, and then the cartoon techniques can be visual or verbal. All of these need to be linked to some kind of effect on the cartoon's message or characterization. Let's practice on the next slide. Question 4, understanding other aspects of the media. Study text F and then answer the set questions. So this is a Madam and Eve cartoon. This, as I said, is an older paper, so it doesn't have the blocks to explain what is happening. So if the writing is ever unclear, you will get a block to understand what is actually being written. So let's have a look at this cartoon. I'm going to go zoom in so we can see nicely. So we have this little girl over here, her name is Tandi, talking to these two what looks like high school boys. Hey, I heard you guys scored 13% in the national maths test. The two guys are like, give me 5, yeah. Didn't your maths teacher explain 13 isn't good? Oh, right. 13 is an unlucky number. Everybody knows that. Look, if I brought 10 apples but only 1 1/3 were good, what does that mean? They take them back to the shop. Yes, back to the shop. Where's your maths teacher? I'd like to have a word with him. He's not here. Not here? It's a school day. He only shows up to teach us about 1, 2, 3, 4 days a month. 4 days out of 31? That's only around 13%. The boy over here, 13%. Oh, now we get it. Simple as 2 plus 2 equals 5. Or have you thought about the Korean education? Now looking at this little cartoon over here, you can kind of already identify what type of humor is being used. It is funny, it's cute, and let's have a look at our questions. So 4.1, in frames 2, 4, 6, and 11, young Tundi is depicted looking directly at the reader with the same expression on her face. Define and account for this expression. So what is this question asking you? It's the same expression, and we need to define, so we need to identify, we need to explain what type of facial expression it is, and account for this expression. Why would she have this facial expression? And this is for 3 marks. So let's go back. So we are specifically looking at frames 2, 4, 6, and 11. So let's have a look at these. So frames 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm sure it's these ones over here. If there's a mistake like that ever, you just go with your guts. 2 over here, she's looking at us again. Over there. All right, and once again. Over here, let's have a deeper look at what her facial expression really is. You can see that her forehead is drawn almost with a frown in it. Her eyes are drawn downward, looking downward, as if to say, seriously. And then she's got a really small drawn mouth, which is also almost like a shocked face. So let's have a look at the memo. So she looks exasperated. So what does exasperated mean? It means when someone is just completely and utterly drained. She cannot understand why these 2 boys, who are much older than her, aren't understanding what she's saying. So you can say she looks annoyed, irritated. Why? Because she cannot communicate effectively with the 2 math students. They can only respond to her comments in a literal sense, or in a literal manner, or they misinterpret her comments. So she can even feel misunderstood because they're actually incapable of understanding the figurative or metaphorical level. And where will you get your 3 marks? For explaining what emotion is there, why she is so annoyed. Okay, the fact that her literal phrases or her phrases, her metaphorical phrases and figurative phrases were taken literally, and you can get the 3rd mark over there. Remember, you do need to explain the facial expression. In particular, you can talk about her downturned eyes, the fact that her mouth is drawn so small, looking directly at the audience, okay, as if to say, seriously. Then, let's look at question 4.2. How does the cartoonist show the reader when the 2 math students are in agreement with each other? Mention 2 ways for 2 marks. Now, what is it asking? How does the cartoonist show the reader when these 2 students are in agreement with each other? And we need to mention 2 ways. Very important. That's where we're going to get our 2 marks. So let's have a look again. I'm just going to erase my red pen all over this so that we can see a little bit better. All right, so the boys are agreeing with each other in this frame over here. Now, if someone is going to do a high five, we can see over there, we even got motion lines over here. They're saying, give me 5. Yeah, they even, sorry, let me get this one away. They're even making eye contact, grade 11, so you can see that over there. So this is how someone can definitely be in agreement with one another. Let's have a look at what the memo says. So they turn to face each other, all right? They turn to face each other, they're making eye contact, and they celebrate their mutual understanding by high fives or slapping each other's hands, and that is for 2 marks. Where are you going to get the marks? For saying they turn to each other or they have eye contact, they're celebrating their mutual understanding, and then definitely the fact you would either get for turning to each other here, or for giving each other high fives. Let's look at 4.3. The humor in this cartoon is mostly based on the difference between the literal and the figurative interpretations. Show how this is true by referring to frames 5 and 6. Now, what is this asking? So we are going to look at humor. Okay, it's based on the difference between literal and figurative interpretations. And you need to show how. You need to explain if this is true by referring to frames 5 and 6. And this is for a full 3 marks. So let's have a look at frames 5 and 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, So look, if I brought 10 apples but took only 1 1/4 or 1 1/3 were good, what does that mean? Look, over here, Tandi's trying to explain to them the fact that they only got 13% for maths. She's trying to give them an example where she thought they would understand her. But then if we look at frame 6, the two boys are like, but take them back to the shops. Yes, take them back to the shops. They are understanding the literal version of this little analogy she's trying to give them. And that's why we actually get this facial expression over here. So let's have a look at the memo. So Tandi mentions the example of the rotten apples to highlight a mathematical concept. The two students choose to interpret it literally and are outraged about the rotten apples being sold. They look confused in frame 3 and then enlightened in frame 6. And that's where you're going to get your 3 marks. Let's move on to the last question for this section. Name any 2 issues which are being satirized in this cartoon. So in this particular paper, they didn't ask to explain what type of humor is being used. They told us that it is satire. So what is it asking? Name, identify 2 issues which are being satirized in this cartoon for 2 marks. Now, the one that's being satirized is definitely education system. Okay, the fact that these boys are excited about getting 13% for maths, they don't understand the figurative meaning of the example that Tandi gives, and the fact that they also don't even care that their teacher comes to school literally 13% of the time. Then it's also thinking to ourselves about, have you thought of being or taking up a career in teaching? So maybe satirizing the fact that teachers are often seen as people who do not have a great understanding. The saying is, those who cannot do, teach. So that is what it's satirizing in this cartoon over here. So let's have a look at the memo. They are satirizing the poor education system, or, sorry, let me highlight, the poor education system, weak or absent teachers, and satisfaction with mediocrity. And over here, the memo says, or the marking guideline says, that you can give any 2 and you'll get your full 2 marks. Next up is question 5, language editing. I hope this lesson taught you a little bit more about how to answer questions about cartoons in the future. Bye!